Hello everyone, welcome to Knowledge India once again. In this video, I'm talking to Dr. Hemang Shah. He has multiple patents granted in the US and he currently works as an innovation and intellectual property evangelist at Qualcomm. He has been working with multiple startups around the world. I really enjoyed this conversation because I got to explore different parts of his journey, starting from a business family in India to getting into tech and then heading to US and achieving PhD in a niche area. Looking at his current state, it all looks good, but I tried to ask him about the unknowns he dealt with. We touched upon the struggles he had while making decisions during his study, career progression, and various other things he regularly deals with, like team culture, conflicts, collaboration, productivity, etc. I'm sure you will learn valuable points from this conversation as I did. Let's begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session. Today, I am joined with Dr. Hemang Shah. I've known him for a really long time, and thank you, Himang, for giving time today.
Thank you, Mank. Really wonderful always, connecting with you. And it's always, I go back to how we first met.
In fact, we have met only once
we met
now,
only
in person.
Once. And that was in that flight. Somehow we ended up talking about our respective journeys. And I'm so happy to be on your show today.
Okay, right. So to tell all of you briefly about Himang is located at Bangalore, but he has done US, India both. So studied in India, then studied in US, worked in US, came back to India. Currently leads the whole startup ecosystem work at Qualcomm. I will let Hemang explain it more, right? Because that would be better. Please.
Thank you, Mank. Yeah, so I work for Qualcomm, and although this interview is meant to share a lot of my personal insights, the fun part about what I work on is to engage with the startup ecosystem in India. And I've been involved with it since 2015, 2016 timeframe. And it's amazing to see how the startup culture is shaping up. I go back to the time when, say, I was a student, and back then, if someone told you that after graduation they want to work for a startup, they were pretty much thinking about maybe an American startup because people had heard about the dot-com boom and the money that they had made over there.
Yeah.
If they told you they're joining an Indian startup, quite likely they were joining like a family business. Because it was not a tech startup, it was more of a business or a trading enterprise that they were joining or that they were setting up. So the tech perspective wasn't there. And now if I cut fast forward to where we are today, you have so many of our students, either they want to start their own companies in the tech space, or they want to join like a fledgling startup, because they see that not only this company gives me a chance to, let's say, make life-changing money. That's of course one part about the risk reward ratio, why startups are preferred, but also they are looking at startups as a way that they can enhance their skills, that they can contribute in a very meaningful way. It's amazing to see how this culture is just shaping up. And now, you have large companies which are battling with startups, to get placements. So it's amazing to be a part of this culture.
Wow. So we will start from the very start. So of course you did so many things, but many of the times when we look at people who are at certain places or who are doing few things to whom we look up to, we somehow think that probably the path was very much defined for those people, or that's why they went there, or maybe they got a lot of guidance and maybe we did not get it. So let's start from the very start. Tell us a bit about your childhood, how it was like, where did you spend your your childhood, where did you study, how was it, were you like the person who always secured first rank, or were you an average person or a backbencher who shined up later on? How was it?
Mang, you're taking me back. I grew up in Mumbai. I was born and brought up in Mumbai, to what you would call as a Gujarati business trading family. Okay, so my family was in the textile markets business area. It's sort of the areas where, if you go back to where Dhirubhai Ambani started, and that story of the trading markets where he made his first mark and then moved on to other larger and bigger things. That's sort of the time frame when my grandfather and his brothers had entered the markets at that time with nothing in their pockets. They were just village boys who somehow made it to Mumbai to earn a living.
Wow.
And from earning a living, they went on to establish small businesses of their own, which my father and his brothers and the rest of the family also joined in, and they grew it to a certain extent. So I grew up in such an atmosphere. And also this atmosphere was the one where formal education was not regarded high. They never cared about studies. In fact, they always looked at how do I not study. So the thing is, they had to study until 10th, mainly to understand accounts. As long as you got the basic math correct, because that's what matters in business. The rest all part, they're like, once 10th is done, you're supposed to join the Gaddi, the family business, right? So Gaddi pe baithna, if I use that Hindi term.
Yeah.
And I guess I was also molded in that way. If that happened, it would not be a surprise to anyone. My mother was a difference maker because she had come from, like, she had completed her undergraduate. She was doing her law also, but she had to quit it because they got married at that time. But in her mind and also from the family side, they're like, if this boy or this next generation wants to study, let's give them that chance. Now, and I was that kind of a black sheep, who grew up in this atmosphere, because suddenly it was all these people I looked up to as elders and who were doing very well as business people, right? So although they might have their report cards were nothing to boast of. If they showed their report card, you're like, man, I don't know what will you do in life.
But they were making good money. Life was all going good,
right,
and things like that, right?
They were very sharp.
Oh.
Okay, they were very sharp. They just didn't care about the formal education system. And here I was in another mold who was a good student. So I won't say I was topping every time, but I was amongst the top 3, top 5 kids in the class. Every subject I enjoyed studying. I enjoyed excelling that way. And the culture was very supportive, right? Because, and that's what I look up to as a big enabler of what I would do to the next generation, whether it's students, whether it's my own children, that even if they are different than you, it's your duty to support them. And my family members, right, whether it's immediate family or my uncles, aunts, and whoever, they're like, hey, you enjoy studying. So they would give me books. They would give me
It's a great thing. It's a great thing that they did not force you into it, that get into the business thing. And because we have a flourishing business, just you have to do that only. That type of pressure was not there.
It was not there. And that liberated me. So even when it came to do engineering, at one point of time, my grandfather was like, okay, he's done his 10th. Let him pick, say, commerce. And the reason why most people pick commerce is that they could bunk classes. Show up only during examination time. Whether you clear the exam or not did not really matter to them. It was more like, hey, let him learn the ropes of the business from the time that they are 15 or 16. And so until you are 21, 22, you have a good solid 6-7 years of running the business, learning the ropes. And at that point, they would start hooking you up for marriage because you're set. And that was the template. So my mom actually negotiated with my grandfather that let him study. Okay, he wants to pursue engineering. Let him pursue that. Every summer vacation, he's not going to have a vacation. He's going to be at the shop. He's going to be the first person to open the shop. He'll do as much work as we all tell him to do. And at any point the business needs him, he will leave everything and join it. So that was a deal that she stuck with them.
Wow. Okay.
And that's how I was able to pursue engineering. I did not know about any of these negotiations behind the scenes.
Wow. So that's really nice. I think, it's great that everybody helped you, but I think then your mom has a big contribution to that. It's great that she supported you in such a nice way. And I think, as you said, it's a very important thing that parents need to give that liberty to the children all the time based on their interest. So like you, when you were in 10th, you finished your 10th, and did you know that, okay, I need to get into, let's say, or I need to go for physics, chemistry, and maths in the 11th and 12th standard? Did you know that, or did you ask someone? How did you decide that I need to go and do engineering?
There's another thing, again, I credit my parents with in hindsight. Because see, our background at that time was we knew about the business world, we knew the world of commerce, we knew about the world of bachelors of arts. Okay, there were really three streams: art, science, and commerce.
Hmm.
And science in our families, I'm speaking just as a family, was not really an option because there was no output that you could do with that degree.
Right.
Okay, with commerce and all that, it was more like fine, you'll apply these skills in the business. So engineering was a world that they did not know. So in the from ninth standard vacation onwards, we would every other weekend we would go to an engineering college in and around Mumbai.
Oh,
Just
okay.
to see what all these students study, what streams were there, what was the syllabus, speak to a few students, speak to a few teachers, just so we understand what they were about.
So like you were going with your parents. Your parents used to take you. Oh, okay.
They would.
That's a nice one, right?
And this was unheard of because I did not know if anyone else was doing it at that time. And we would also have people that we knew that were studying engineering. So these would be, let's say, people who were 1 or 2 years elder to me, who were my seniors, and then they would come home and we would ask them that, hey, what are you studying? So like that, we met, a few kids and this good friend of mine who was pursuing a diploma in telecommunications. And we're like, what is this diploma degree? How does this tie to, your bachelor's of engineering? What are you studying? And he's like, one option is after 10th, you choose this, science stream, you study physics, chemistry, mathematics. Then based on those marks, you get into engineering colleges. And so 3 years later, you study the basics of engineering. And after that, the specialization begins. So it's a 2+4 type of a scenario in terms of years.
Correct.
He's like, this diploma is something where right away you study engineering after 10th. Okay, and you do, it's a 10 plus 3 plus 3.
Yeah.
Which ultimately the equation ends up giving
comes
the same
out
answer.
to be same. Yeah.
But he's like, you're studying engineering from the get-go. He told me the subjects he's studying. And at that point of time, cellular phones were very new in the country. Like, I want to be a part of this ecosystem. I want to study telecom right away. I want to study mobile communications. I want to study satellite communications.
No, sorry, you said that, or your
that.
friend? Oh, okay. You got quite interested after knowing that.
Yeah, because I'm like, this is what I'm studying. In this is what I'll get to study. And I'm like, I looked at the other stream, which is the traditional stream. I'm like, the first time that they will probably understand what microprocessors are, what cell phones are, what satellite communications is going to be pretty much 5 years after the 10th standard. And I will get to know of it in my second year of engineering and third year of engineering, which is like much ahead than them. And I'm like, if this is really what I want to do, why not do it right away? Why put it for later? Why choose the diploma stream? And this was a bit unusual in the sense that I was amongst one of the school toppers in my 10th standard. And probably if I look at the state records, and so the toppers went to the best science colleges, and then they ideally went on to the best engineering colleges and so on. And here I was keeping all those things aside and saying, I'm going to choose diploma. So it was an unusual choice, but in hindsight, a very good one at that.
So just to get that right, okay, did you do state board or did you do CBSE?
State
what
board.
Was it? State board. So you did really good. You got good marks in 10th, but because of this interaction which you had with the friend, you understood that if you go via the diploma route, you will be able to read that technical stuff sooner. Because of that, you chose that path instead of going via 11th and 12th.
Right.
Okay, so you started with your diploma.
With my diploma in telecommunications.
Okay.
And so the way diploma works, and it's a high risk option in the sense that after 3 years, you join the main engineering stream in the second year.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, but the seats are limited. So instead of a class of 60, the diploma seats are probably I think they were 7 at that time. So again, you have to score really well to be a part of that. And I joined for my diploma. Again, I still hold this belief today. It was the best telecom college in Mumbai at that time. So
Okay.
I got that pick for my diploma, and even from engineering, I scored well enough to get in that same college again.
Oh, okay. So there itself, okay, you got into your BTech after that,
Correct.
or
And
B.
even today, I'm in touch with my college. I'm very much fond of my college. It's called Vivekanand Education Society Institute of Technology,
Hmm.
also formerly known as VESIT, or informally
Okay.
known as VESIT.
Okay.
And today also it has an amazing infrastructure, amazing labs, beautiful campus. Has
Hmm.
grown much better than when I was a student. I mean, it was great then. It's greater now.
Right. So that's really good to understand. Now here, what I'm just thinking is that one thing which I understand hearing these events is that, as such, if we see, even in your family, there was no one who was there to tell you directly that this is what you should do. In fact, like, it's not that your father and mother were there from the engineering background and explained you that, oh, you should go ahead and read this one. So what I'm trying to say is that, though they were able to support you, but you also had constant interest, because of which it became possible that, okay, you were able to utilize their support, and then few other things also came in and you were able to move on that path. Many of the time, the reason why I'm saying this is, many of the times when I talk to some of the junior folks, they do complain that there's nobody to guide me, but then at the same time, I do not see any uh, you know uh, they are not trying to inquire enough. I think inquiry is very important from a person as well.
Oh,
Okay.
100% agree. And this technique I learned formally later on is called as
Okay.
informational interviewing.
Okay.
So let's say you want to work for a very large company. If you're a student who's graduating now, and you're
Hmm.
like, I want to work in this particular field.
Hmm.
Okay, most of us make assumptions based on the titles that we see. But I was like, okay, what does that title really mean?
Hmm.
What does someone with that title do?
Hmm.
So one way you find out is, okay, you apply to the job, uh, assuming you clear the interviews, you start working on it.
Hmm.
And a terrible thing happens. A year later, you figure out that this is not what I wanted to do.
Hmm.
And that leads to a bunch of dissatisfaction. This is why you also see people who might jump from one job to another, like, far more often.
Hmm.
And it might look good on paper, but internally there is some dissatisfaction.
Correct.
And one way to prevent that is, before you even apply, just
Hmm.
ask a few people, what does this role require me to do?
Hmm.
What will I be doing? What skills are required?
Yeah.
How does one have fun in that role? And the thing is, for something like this, for this informational interviewing,
Hmm.
you're not putting anyone on the other side at any trouble. Because let's say if I'm asking you for a job,
Hmm.
you might be hesitant in some reply, because at one point you might say, I'm not looking to hire you.
Hmm.
So I'm putting you in an uncomfortable position.
Correct.
But let's say, Mayank, if I ask you that, Mayank, you're working in this role. Can you tell me what you do?
Hmm.
And by the way, I'm not interested in applying, to the job right now.
Yeah.
Then I've put you at ease. You can even share very frankly what's going on in your world.
The plus and minus, both the things, I'll be able to tell frankly in that case.
And that's what we did when it came to these informational interviewing, with students, with faculty, with others.
Hmm.
Because let's say if you go to a college and you're like, they'll ask you, okay, hey, what are your scores? And I'm like, okay, I've just applied for my 10th standard, or I'll be applying. And they're like, okay, let's talk after that.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
instead of saying I want to go to your college, I'm like, I want to know about this field. They
Hmm.
were very open in sharing those things.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And I think you raised a very important point, which I think, like, nowadays the culture is, oh, you are there in that job for last 2 years. What are you doing? You need to jump. You need to jump, right? Because there is a hike. There is
Mhm.
something more you will get, right? And just for that, people change jobs just because of that. And I think you gave a very important point, that it's very important to understand, and not just from the recruiter. I think people who are trying to change, who are trying to get into a new job, they can get a certain amount from the recruiter, but if they really want to understand, they need to talk to somebody who has worked in that organization. Even better if a person has worked in that department, in that role, as closest as they can get. I think they need to get the information. That's very important. And we cannot just keep complaining that nobody's coming and telling me. Nobody is obliged to do that. We
Yeah.
need to first go ahead and, we need to go ahead and put some efforts, and then probably we will get some help as well. So that's really good. So okay, you got into your diploma, that part is clear. So you did your diploma, you got into your BTech. Now you already explained that your college was really good, which is a good thing to hear. I would also say good things about my college, but there is a thing uh, which is largely uh, uh, I think it varies a lot in India, because in India you have all sorts of colleges. You have colleges which can be considered very good. You have colleges which are really poor in the in one way or the other. But I think so. The question which I would ask is, of course, you said it had all the good infrastructure and everything, but uh, is it that after what happened during your BTech in terms of your learning? Did you get clarity that what do you want to do after your graduation gets completed? Did you have clarity at that time? And is it that whatever you learned in those 3 years of degree, that was enough to do whatever you did after that?
So I'm going to answer with a view of hindsight, right? Which is now tying back the dots. I was clueless when it came to my undergraduate years, meaning third year, fourth year, and looking at what I was thinking then and what I'm doing now. No way that I can say that Mayank had planned this thing perfectly and look, this is how it turned out. No way at all. In fact, what I'm doing now is stuff that I had no idea about back then. Yeah, but if I'm putting myself in those shoes again, and most decisions which I'd made were on the basis of these are the few things which I know well. I'm enjoying them, but I don't know enough. And if I'm curious enough, I want to learn more about them.
Right.
And ideally, there's a path that puts me in a spot where others, like, and especially organizations, need those skills. So if I'm putting back myself in my third year engineering, when you're trying to make these career decisions, which way am I heading? A lot of my friends chose business degrees after that. Some others went a different path. The reason why I chose to pursue a master's first was that I was enjoying a few subjects a lot more, but I didn't know them enough to apply them at work. And so we're like, I want to know a bit more about them. And these were topics around microwave engineering, satellite communications, I would say core telecommunication subjects, even mobile telephony. Those were things that I wanted to know a lot more about. Another topic which I was deeply in love with, but I didn't think there was a path in it afterwards, was display engineering, because we had a subject called television systems. And I really enjoyed learning about how our TVs work. And back then, TVs were these cathode ray tubes, these big boxes.
The big ones, yeah.
And sometimes you would hit them on the side so that the screen started working and all that.
Yeah.
I was very curious about how every pixel was shown on the screen. And just the science behind it fascinated me. So I got into my master's in telecom, and I applied to the US, just doing a lot of similar things as before. Had a bunch of seniors who went to other places in the world. Majority of my seniors went to United States for their masters. A good number also did pursue those studies in India as well, in Indian colleges. But I just felt that at the time, the exposure which I wanted, was, one thing you wanted to also explore some international shores, right? Just to give you a different perspective.
Correct.
Also, infrastructure-wise, career-wise, it seemed like a better option at that time. So just speaking to a bunch of seniors, I made my way to Drexel University for my master's in telecom. And from the get-go, I wanted to research with someone. And this is where, after landing there, you start meeting with professors. And I felt that there was a disconnect between what the websites told, what they were working on, and what they were doing at that point of time. Because their research projects had changed. They might have gotten a grant in some other area. I'm like, you know what? These core telecom topics that they were showing on their website, and what their research is on are two separate things. That happened with a few of them. And for the few of those where the alignment was true, they did not have any research spot openings. So I'm like, okay, what do I do? I'm like, okay, there was this young professor who had joined, and his face was there on the website, but nothing else beyond that.
Okay.
Like, he was so new, he had to update everything over there. I had a chance meeting with him, and he gave me a bunch of papers to read. Like, he looked at my resume, he's like, this is solid, but I work in this area where, we call them switchable mirrors. Okay, what is a switchable mirror? Like, imagine there's a conference room which has these glass windows on the side. And it's completely opaque. You cannot see through it.
Okay.
But I'll apply just a voltage across it, and it becomes transparent.
Oh.
And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. How does it work? So he gave me a bunch of his papers, and those papers were like runaway, man. I can't understand a single thing of it. But something in me said, okay, I'll just take these papers. You're being polite to him. I go back to my apartment with my roommates. I'm like, you know what? Nothing's clicking and all that, but I start reading these papers. It doesn't absorb on the first read, but I don't know. They were around me. There was nothing. There was no social media at that time. There was no other distraction. So I gave those another go, and a few things started, being absorbed in my system. Like, this is interesting. Let's go, say that I'm interested, see what happens.
Right.
So he's like, okay, fine. I'm building a lab. And at that time, he had also recruited his first PhD student. I was a master's student at the time. And he's like, you know what? Why don't you all start helping me build the lab? So we are building the lab literally from the ground up, looking at optical tables, optical things to order, materials to order.
Yeah.
Very different perspective that I received. After a month or so, he's like, and he had put me on this duty of reading papers and doing literature search. I did not know that this activity is called literature search, but he had me doing those things. And about a month or so, he's like, Himang, if you want, just apply for a PhD. And I'm like,
but your master's was going on.
Correct.
Oh, okay. And like, you can just start at that time itself, is it?
I could have.
Okay.
And I said, no, man. To me, PhDs are people who look in a certain way. Like, I had these appearance notations in my head that a doctorate student has to look a certain way, has to behave a certain way, and I was far away from that.
Maybe with beard and all, and very serious.
Yeah.
Something like this.
Always serious, no fun in life types. I'm like, I'm not that.
Okay.
So that was one part. And the other is, you had always heard of these horror stories of someone's doctorate going on for 8 years, 10 years, and no end in sight. I'm like, boss, I like studying, but not that I want to be a student for the next 10 years. Although in hindsight, I would have loved it. but I'm like, I'll take my time. So I started, I'm like, you know what, I'll keep doing my research. And he's like, I don't have funding for masters. I had part-time jobs, which I was doing on the side. So they were paying my bills. They were not taking care of my tuition, but it was okay. But I'm like, it's fine. I'm enjoying what I'm doing right now. Over time, things started clicking. I was really enjoying my research work. And soon enough, it was apparent to me that if I just continued as a master's research student, I would have scratched only the surface in this area of work. And if I wanted to know something meaningful, just a doctorate was the only way out to me.
Because master's degree would be of a particular duration, right? And then it gets over.
So I would have completed most of my research work in about a year or a year and 3 months or so. And then you took another 3 months or so to write either a thesis or a research paper. We had the option to do both. Like, in about a year and a half or 2 years time, max to max, I would only know so much.
Yeah. And by that time, you were quite interested in that.
I was hooked. I was completely hooked. I'm like, I'm not letting go of this topic until I am satisfied that I know something. And once that switch clicked, I had a call with my parents that, I said we'd go for a master's, but I really want to go for doctorate. Please, let's complete it. I don't know what the career path will look like because this was an interdisciplinary topic. It was a topic which combined electrical engineering or electronics, as we call in India, combined optics, it combined material science. And the career options at that time, it was not like a mainstream telecom degree where I would say all these other companies, all these other countries in the world will need this expertise. It was a very niche expertise that I was building, but all tied to display engineering.
Right.
So I still chose to work with that professor and got my doctorate degree. Was unconventional. Tying back to the family connection, like everyone in that family was surprised that because you go from pretty much no graduates in the family to someone who's
doing a doctorate.
doing a doctorate.
So how many years did it take for you to complete your PhD?
Overall, including my master's, 5 years.
Still, like that is considered pretty fast, right? Like
it was.
You finished it. Wow. So that is really good to understand. I'll ask 1-2 questions here, and then I want to ask something more, which I don't want to miss. But on this one, right? You went with just a plan. I think the part which I'm trying to bring up is when you finished your BTech, you just knew that, yeah, I want to study more. I am interested in this area, so I need to study more. So you went for the masters. You did not really know you did not know exactly at that time that this is what I'll do. I mean, you did not have 100% clarity. Maybe you read something, and as you are saying, the website says something else, then you land there and you find out something else. It always happens, not just with universities, with most other things, right? And as you further worked, slowly the path unfolds in front of you. Many of the times, people just ask that in terms of guiding, can you tell me the full path that I need to take, right? That is, and I mean, I'm hoping that people who are watching this video later on, they understand this thing, that nobody can tell you the full path which you will take in future in the very start. You have to walk few steps and it will start unfolding. It is important that you keep putting your true effort and with some connection. I think your connection was that you wanted to know that more, right? In a particular thing, you got interested. And I mean, you said you never wanted to do PhD, and here you are sitting with PhD and all of that done, but you never wanted to do it. So you ended up doing that, which you never wanted to do. And it's because more things got revealed to you. And I think that's what everybody should understand. So one thing which I wanted to ask, you come from a business family, people supported you. Okay, go ahead and study. All of that is good. But then you were in Mumbai, you finished your graduation, engineering. I'm sure you at that time, you could have just gone ahead and like picked up some job, right? What was there any discussion around why are you not getting into earning money now? Because, your marriage also needs to happen. And then now you are saying, I will study more. How whether you negotiated that situation first? If you negotiated, how did you negotiate? Yeah. How did it happen?
So a good question, man. Yeah, in our if I would have taken the typical path in our families, that question would have popped up sooner. But I think by that time I had enough belief by a lot of people around me, who believed in my abilities as a student, and they're like, we need to support him, right? If he wants to study further, let him do that. The path would have been likely that you complete your master's, get 1 or 2 years of work experience, and then that question of marriage would pop up. Okay, and
but you were somewhat lucky, I would say, in that case. Just after the BTech, nobody was forcing you that why do you have to study more and just get married.
But around that time, I had made that decision because I had a girlfriend in college, and now she's my wife. So that question, the timeline did line up eventually. So it worked out in that sense. But the support from the family was there, for further studies. And it was for the question of a job, I was also the placement officer for my batch. So that gave me a unique insight because firstly, we were the batch after the .com bust.
Right.
So the placements during our time were the worst that it had been. Because
Yeah.
curiously, a year ago, it was like everything's shining, everything is gold.
Yeah.
Like even if you are a student who has just passed,
Hmm.
you are getting placed, no question about it. But exactly a year later, all those folks that got placed in the previous year, a
Hmm.
number of them were getting these bench warming roles. That there was their
Hmm.
onboarding was either being delayed or their placement was even cancelled in some cases.
Yep. Yep. Hmm.
And when I was the placement officer, me along with my other fellow placement officers, we would be making these calls to the regular hirers, and they were asking us to hold off on things, or they were denying.
Hmm.
So we had this unusual task of just thinking outside the box. That
Hmm.
okay, our regular folks are not going to come, or if they are going to come, they'll be participating in a limited, hiring role.
Hmm.
So what do we do? So we started pretty much opening up every directory that we could find, every company that seemed to be working in tech, whether it's
Hmm.
computers technology, because we had four main streams to really recruit companies for. We started making these brochures. We're like, hey, let's go market our college.
Wow.
Was also a time where me and my girlfriend at that time, now my wife,
Hmm.
and a bunch of us, we got selected for a national paper presentation competition, and this was in
Okay.
Bangalore.
Uh-huh.
And Bangalore at that time was coming up as a big IT city. And so we're like, okay, let's just take about 50, 60 brochures. Let's get them printed about our college. And one of these days, when we get a break, we hired an auto rickshaw. And this is again without knowing where Google Maps is. Okay, we're telling the auto driver that if you want to go to this address, which
Yeah.
area, can you take us there? He would take us there, and most of the times we would meet the receptionist, and that receptionist would politely take the brochure and shoo us away. In some cases, we would meet someone who worked in those companies. We tried all those things, and that gave me a different perspective as well, which is that this job world is there. It will be there, but the timing of it also was not right in
Yeah.
my sense, because the industry was in a slump.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm just thinking that I mean you opened this particular part, like doing these activities in the college. I think I mean if you look at it, uh, I mean you might be doing so many things in like today's time, but you are a lot more mature now. But at that time, when you were just a graduate student, at that time taking this initiative, printing it, thinking that okay, we are going to Bangalore, how do we use the time and do this further? That I think was really fantastic one, really, right? Thinking about it, that let's take all those steps to make it happen.
We were forced to.
I,
Right? See, if it's good times, you don't worry about those things.
yeah.
Here, it's like we're looking at sort of a batch of probably 300. We're like maybe 25, 30 of the top students might get placed.
My God.
And
10%.
very likely those 25, 30 will be
Hmm.
going abroad for their further studies, because, that's what we were doing at that time.
Right.
So
Wow.
everyone was taking GRE, everyone was appearing for GMAT or the CAT examinations for MBA. So we knew people were planning different roles. A lot of them
Hmm.
were preparing for GATE to get into MTech and other programs in India itself.
Right.
So we knew that
So
the top students were the ones that will easily make their way out. It's the others, right, that wanted to work. We need to get options for them.
right. No, that's true. I mean, what I was trying to bring out was that um, people need to pick up such opportunities in college whenever they get to do some of this type of work. I think, well, as the uh, as the time passes by, we see that nowadays there is a lot of community work happening in all the colleges. I mean, it was not that much 10 years back, and then 15 years back it was even lesser. Nowadays it is a lot, but I think well, it's my perspective that I see that nowadays nowadays a lot of things which happen in college are also going towards a lot of just marketing type of thing, and instead of doing some real real stuff which actually makes a difference. So I mean, one thing which I feel is that first is people should get involved in doing things when they are there in the college. It builds that those qualities in you. Like, I'm sure when you did that whole planning and did this type of marketing, for that a lot of work would have happened between you and your friends at that time, and that develops those type of skills which you use later on as well. Right?
Fully agree, Mank. And there's again a different way of looking at it also. Even if someone is doing it purely for resume building, because let's just say I want to be a placement coordinator, because in a batch of 300, there might be 7 to 10 of placement coordinators completely, right? So it puts you in an exclusive list, to some extent. So on my resume, I can write placement coordinator, as would a bunch of others. And that allows you to differentiate yourself a bit. So there's that marketing ability which you get.
Right.
But as you start working in that role, because no one is getting that role just for the title, at some point of time, work is going to show up. And if you don't work, that title will be taken away from you.
Correct.
Right. And in our case also, like a lot of these things, once you see other people who also pull their weight, even if you may be taking a back seat, eventually you'll catch up. And that'll open perspectives.
Right. Good stuff. So, okay, now let's go to the part when you left India, you went to US. You already talked about how you got into the university, started with masters, but ended up doing PhD. But tell us something about those years. How do you see? I mean, you have studied in India. You have lived in India, and you went to US. Tell us few things. How do you see the student life different in like countries like US and then in India? I mean, people study here as well, and then people study there as well. But as far as I have seen, when people are studying or doing their, let's say, BTech or MTech in India, they just study. They do not do a part-time work, or they do not do anything else. But whereas most of the people who go to US, they do some part-time work as well, right? Different types of work depending on who gets what. But there are, I mean, they do bunch of like many things. So tell us, like, what was your experience? What did you feel when you saw that difference, or what would you like to tell people? Because there are a lot of people who think actually that if you go to US, then everything would be good. Like, or probably the quality here is not good. Or I think a lot of it's a very rosy picture out there that if you go to US, everything is kind of sorted. So I want you to kind of throw some light there, how it was really.
Yeah, Stephen, when I went there, you're used to seeing these headlines or hearing from people who said that, this average student from India has become a topper over there. Like, as if everything is just so simple out there. And when you, at least as a master student, right, the first observation, immediate first one, was that in the first term, we were going to take 3 classes, 3 subjects that we had to take. And there would be 3 classes in the week. That's it.
Okay.
So here I was transitioning from, let's say, 6 days of 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock or so of rigorous class schedule, and then time in the library, to like overall 9 hours in the entire week.
That's it.
And this curriculum was also different because the university would also want full-time workers to take part in their master's courses. So the classes that they would keep were in the evenings, from like 6 to 9 in the evenings.
Okay.
So you had the full day free. And you're like, I just have to study for these 3 hours in a day for a subject, and that's it. And so that was the first observation. The other observation was that the teaching style was very different. It was not someone that told you, here is exactly how this works, do this, do this, do this. It was quite open-ended. And that took me a while to adjust. Because I was not used to questioning the teachers. I was not used to questioning what was going on. I was used to just absorbing and following. And here, this style of teaching required me to change some gears. And that took me a good 6 months to first understand that this is what's happening. And then probably a lot more time after that to get in the mold of things. That here you don't just have to absorb, you have to ask that what can I do with this information? How can I apply it? How can
Yeah.
the question papers were also different. Like there was no business of seeking last 5 years of question papers and then adapting to it, right? It was more like whatever that professor wanted. The professor would have a book, and that person could set a question paper anyhow they wanted. It could be a completely open-ended, or it could be maybe some questions from the book with changes that they would introduce. So the goal was to check your understanding. And it's different. So it's not checking the factual knowledge which you know. It's not checking that, hey, tell me if you memorize this thing or not. It's more like, tell me if you understand it and if you can apply it in the real world. That was the biggest change. And over time, if you think of it, that's also why those countries that we call as Western countries have done well, because knowledge, the intellectual ability, it's there across the world. It's what you do with that knowledge. Like, do you have the freedom to mold it? Do you have the freedom to question things? Do you have the freedom to make it bigger? And also, apart from that, that intellectual expansion was there here also in India. It's just that in the US, if you went at that time, I would go to my professor. He would ask me, Himang, what do you think of this? It was not that he was testing me. Maybe he didn't know. And he's like, "Arey, tell me if you understand this thing."
Right.
So that involved participation is one thing. And the other is if I went to him with a proposal that, Adam, I think here's what we should do to improve our understanding on this topic. Let's, what if we got this instrument? What if we ordered these things? You would have the freedom to tell me, okay, I have the budget, go order it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think, right? Such type of conversation. First of all, it's really hard to think that when you are studying in India, a teacher would actually ask you, "What do you think about this?"
Yeah.
I mean, it can be a question that where, as you said, it is more about testing your knowledge. Do you know this or not? But in a way, that person is actually asking you to know your perspective or you know your knowledge. That way, that question would never be asked, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a very important difference which you pointed out, right? And I'm just thinking, yeah, so only 3 hours of class. Okay, no, you said 9 hours in the whole week. So
Yeah.
only 9 hours of class in the whole week. Rest all the time was, you had,
It's yours.
and how you want to structure, you want to study all of that way. But how did you manage the food part?
The food was easy because we had roommates.
Easy. Okay.
We
So
had
like
roommates,
you both all of you used to cook.
we were not good cooks, but we ate to survive.
Okay.
And we had part-time jobs, and the university had a bunch of food trucks around us. And there were decent vegetarian options. I'm a vegetarian, so that there were quite a few vegetarian options. So food was never a problem as such.
Wow.
Yeah, it's more of finding the budget to pay for the food, that if you're ordering from outside. So we didn't have that much money at that time. And the on-campus jobs helped with that. Later as students, we learned a few things just to get by, but pizza was always there. We would attend a lot of seminars, and seminars came with donuts and coffee. so food was a good motivator.
Okay. So great. So we are at a stage where you finished your degree, your graduation, masters, and now you are a PhD. What happened after that? Did you take a job right after your PhD, or how did it go?
Yeah. So for doctorate students, the career path looks a bit different. And here's one misconception which even I had, that a doctorate tends to be approached to get their ideas on any topic, right? So because they're like, "Arey, he's a doctor, he'll know about things." Like he's a PhD guy, ask
Must
him
be knowing
questions
a lot.
But the reality is different, right? Because see, bachelor's gives you information on these many topics. Then you go for a master's, and master's is really a subset of your bachelor's.
But more depth.
And within that, if you do a PhD, it's really you're picking a very tiny slice and you're going deeper and deeper and deeper to extract the oil well.
Right.
So doctorate knows a whole lot more about one topic but may not know anything else about the other topics.
Mm, mm,
And so when it applies to career paths, the opportunities for doctorates are limited inherently, because
mm,
you got to find something which requires that type of expertise in that domain. Now, I at that point of time was really enjoying my academic life. I
mm.
had very good relations, very good network with others in academia. And I was seeing in myself that if I wanted to be a professor, I could have been. So a part of
Okay.
me wanted to be in academia.
Okay.
But my parents were also, they gave me a different perspective, saying that ideally, I've also wanted to come back to India. And they're like, if you work in the industry, you may
Mm,
find more options once you come back to, if you want to come back to India later in the future.
right.
So I started looking for industry jobs as well. And I found one. So Qualcomm at that time was working on a very unique display technology, and their team had in San Diego had an opening for me at that point of time. It somehow clicked,
Wow.
and
Mm,
I joined Qualcomm, worked in that domain. So the thought process at that time was, let's explore the industry life as such, because I knew the academic life, and
mm,
helping build my professor from the ground up had given me a picture of what to expect if I became a professor. That
mm,
these are the steps I would follow. So my learning would not start from zero. I had a step up,
mm,
but I knew a lot more about the academic world, and especially from the American perspective, that how to sort of make my mark. I'd
mm.
also worked with a lot of assistant professors that were joining in, and I would be a third year, fourth year student. They would be, you could say, 2 years just further ahead from where I was. And so they were
Okay.
also open in sharing what they were going through at that time. So I knew the academic life.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, let's explore the industry job world as well.
Mm.
Let's see how the knowledge is applied differently. And I'm like, okay, let's do that. And I've been in industry ever since.
So yeah, I mean, okay, then you
Yeah.
understood. So like as you said, you joined Qualcomm, and then of course you are working with Qualcomm, and after a few years, probably after working in US for a couple of years, then you moved back to India.
Yes.
So that was more to be with family. That was the thing, or something
So
else.
was both. It was always a case of what would I do, because I didn't want to just completely leave everything and just come back to India and then be in a state
Mm,
where, okay, now let's explore what I'll do.
mm,
I wanted to always apply my skills in roles which required them.
mm,
Rather than finding like I have a solution, now let's look for a problem. I didn't
mm,
want to be in that spot.
mhm,
The family part was always there. It was again, I was working in such a niche area where at that point of time I felt there weren't too many options in India where I could directly apply my skills.
mm.
Uh, because the display industry as such is limited in the world globally. There are very
Yeah.
few companies, very few strong research labs which are working in those areas. And now, thankfully, at that point of time, Qualcomm Research was building a team that required my expertise. I'm like, okay,
Right.
the thing lined up from a personal perspective. Also, my I was younger back then. I'm like, okay,
Mm,
let me take that chance. Let me take that opportunity. I had a young kid, and we would not be disrupting his school life in any way. He was
right.
about a year old at that time. So I'm like, okay,
Mm,
what? Let's take that chance. See what happens here. Because you're young enough, nimble enough. You don't have anchors placed anywhere. So
correct.
we are flexible enough. So we took that leap of faith and came to India.
And it has been going well
It
because
has
you
been
are in
10
India.
years. I'm looking at the date. I'm like, okay, yeah, we just crossed 10 years in India.
Wow.
Returning back to India.
Wow. So that's really good. So if we now look at basically starting from Mumbai, your whole journey going there, figuring out things, and then getting into, and finally you are back, or you are into this organization, building this whole research team, in India. Uh, Now, of course, like at this time or for the past many years, you are leading many teams, and you are making things work. Tell us a few things about how do you, uh, and this is more from your observations, that what have you seen when uh, different teams, or many people, when they have to work together within a team, and they have to like basically uh, achieve a common goal ultimately, but uh, then there are frictions and people coming together as as a leader, how have you tried to sort that out? Or tell us some examples or stories where you would have, I'm sure you would have solved it, something of that sort.
So man, this question is an important one. It happens anytime you have people, there are going to be some conflicts. And conflicts are not bad. Okay, conflicts are perspectives not matching up.
Correct.
Okay, one person wants to do things a different way, the other person may have a different take on that topic. A conflict is bad when people become rigid in their views, and they're like, this is the way, and there cannot be any deviation from that. Meaning, you believe in your way, but either you disregard the other person's perspective, or you're not going to explain why that approach has been chosen. There are reasons for that, which you may not have. So let's say, even if I go back to my days as a grad student, there were some areas which were given to me to work on, which I was proposing, and those proposals were rejected. And someone with more experience had that vision to say that no, it's not the right approach. Your proposal has some merit, but not enough to act on. And the reason that conflict did not become terrible was because of open communication. And that is the best way to work in any domain, any organization, any size, whether you're a startup, whether a large organization. You give people explanations, you hear each other out. Right? Things happen because of stupid things, because someone is suggesting an idea and you're like, okay, fine, let's shut it down. That's not going to help the other person. It's not going to help you also. Even if you've heard that thing before, hear it out, or at least give that other person the explanation. It may not happen real time, but then as a leader, it's your duty to maybe find time for either one-on-ones. It may be time to give a perspective, because maybe in a group setting, you cannot share certain things. But one-on-one, you may have the freedom. So the best way to resolve any interpersonal issues and all that is by communication.
Right. So open communication, that's a very important thing. And so one of the things which we see, at least I see in the IT field, is people like to write code, people like to develop things, but when you talk to them about communicating that thing to others in the form of a document or in the form of a formal communication, that work somehow is seen, probably, if I can say, people do not really think that's a great thing to do, right? Nobody likes to write the documentation. I would say even I was that way many years back, but I think today I whenever I look at a piece, I would always ask, where is the written stuff about this thing? So I think writing that and sharing is very important. I think
100%. And sometimes even for a very selfish interest, because right now the code is very clear in your head. Okay, if I ask you something, you'll be able to explain it very clearly. A year from now, even you'll look back at your own code and say, what was I thinking? So I won't say I was the best code documenter around, but at least I would find my ways with comments around the code that this is what I'm trying to do. More as a guiding stone for myself.
Yeah. That I think, and that is something which I think everybody has to pick up as a skill, that it is not just enough that you do great work, it is also important that the great stuff which you are doing, are you able to explain it to others or not? Because everybody would not be able to just get it probably at your wavelength.
Yeah, and even from a let's say career perspective, and I'm not saying career in terms of title, and more in terms of your responsibilities. That let's say as a coder, if you're good, eventually you might find a suggestion being made to you that, hey, you're good at this thing. Why don't you lead a team of coders? Why don't you all execute? So you are stepping up, and so your goal is to let's say teach others what made you so good. And if you document well, if you explain well, you can lead a team that will be at your level, but ideally performing at a higher level than you, because that makes you look good as a leader, right? So if you enable others, if you leave people that, hey, my stuff which I was doing before, if it can be followed by others, and if it can be taken to the next level, because the next generation is going to be smarter than you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, make them successful, and if they are successful, you will be successful.
Correct. Yeah, that is something which has to be understood by many people, and especially people who are managing teams. I think this is very important. In many of the places I've seen that people actually try to hide the information even, right, within the teams, and so that there are pockets. There's this pocket which knows few things, there's this pocket which knows something else and will not share it. But I think so that is a very important thing. Maybe I'll ask you 1-2 more questions. I know we have been talking for quite long. So you are like in your current profile, you are supporting many of the startups currently, right? So when you look at a particular startup, okay, first thing I think I should ask this. So maybe you listen to many pitches, and then do you support them in the like maybe from your organization side or from some place in terms of guidance and funding and that type of thing, or what sort of role do you play there?
So we run incubation and mentorship programs.
Okay.
So depending on the program, the support is different. But yeah, the idea is we listen to pitches, and for incubation, there is greater technical support. There's greater IP guidance. So I work in the area of intellectual property, and how startups should look at, let's say, patents as a part of their business strategy. For mentorship also, it works. So the depth can vary depending on the program that a startup is selected in.
Okay. Understood. So, and I think, well, the whole startup thing can be a complete discussion so in itself. So I think we will probably plan it separately. If I have to ask you that, what are the challenges which you face every day, or every day in the sense the type of roles which you have been doing? So I'm sure all of us have some sort of challenges. Your challenges would have been something else when you were doing your masters or when you were working in US. Now that you're working in India, maybe same organization but different type of role. What are the current challenges which you face in your day-to-day work?
I think it's one big challenge is keeping up with latest and greatest tech developments. There's so much which is happening that you try to keep up, let's say, with headlines or with different ways. So things at a high level, but if you want to explore things at the depth, that becomes challenging, because one is finding time for things, and it goes back to you figuring out how do you manage different projects so that you carve time for these things, shutting out distractions, which is again difficult in the world that we live in today. But really it comes down to, okay, are you able to find time to devote to just like learning about something without expectations of the outcome? That becomes difficult.
Right. How much time do you spend on social media in a week, roughly?
On and off. There are weeks where it becomes a bit more, and sometimes there is a work reason for doing it, because I work with startups and all that, and social media is a great way to learn more about them. It's a great way to
Yeah.
to really discover them. And LinkedIn is one of the places where I spend a fair amount of my time, uh, like I would say for work or quasi work related things. There's some amount of using it for social media sake as well. Uh,
Yeah.
the other place where I spend a fair amount of time as an observer is Twitter, because I
Okay.
think if you regulate your feed well, it can turn into a source for learning quite interesting insights.
Hmm. Okay. Okay.
But yeah, these two are places, and there are waves. There are waves where my time on it sometimes increases a lot more, and there are times where if I look at, let's say, the last month, I have pretty much been off social media.
Hmm.
So it goes in waves. I'm not married to it.
Hmm.
It's To me it's a tool, and I think I've wasted time earlier ahead in other platforms to know that okay, spending time on social media is not my thing. Like I
Right.
go back to social media when it was I think Orkut was
Orkut.
something which was there, and like, okay,
And then
fine.
Facebook came after that.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll come to the last question. So, uh, coming from a family, there was no financial constraint. You did not struggle figuring out your, let's say, school fee and things like that. So somebody might actually just think that, oh, this fellow actually did not have to really struggle, right? Everything was all rosy green stuff. Business, family, money was there, went ahead and studied. Then okay, got into this thing, and then went to US. So uh, I think one thing which I want to ask at the last is that maybe just talk about one or two things where you struggled the most in the life, and because to us it might look like, yeah, everything is going good, person is working in Qualcomm, yeah, right, everything is great, uh, person is doctorate, right, and but what was your biggest struggle? When did you struggle? Was there a point when you went very low?
Yeah, uh, the thing which is not understood about business families is that from the outside things appear well, but
Okay.
internally the cash flows are a complete mess a lot of times. Just because at least the industry that we operated in works on credit.
Okay.
So you sell, let's say, bunch of meters of cloth, and the world thinks, okay, you got the payment the next day. No, the payment can come anytime after 6 months, after 9 months, sometimes after a couple of years.
Oh God.
So the cash flows are completely messed up in that sense, and that puts a weird financial strain, particularly for key moments. So there have been times where, uh, it's the time, and in that time, to going abroad. Like when I went for my masters, there was a dot-com bust which had happened that had a chain reaction on every industry, including the textile industry. So that was a time when we had a lot of unknowns, and somehow, and was also a time when, let's say, banks were not really supporting students for education. But thankfully, we had good relations that a bank did step in and help in with a bit that got me not what I fully wanted, but at least a Kickstarter. But when I went for my masters, it was a time when things were just unknown. So, and that put put not just me but my entire family in a different state of mind. That again, we ideally you want to know the full road ahead, but we had only lights on for the first 100 meters, and then we're like, okay, we'll do this and figure it out later. So that was one part, and the other which kept on happening was I've always found myself at the intersection of different domains, whether it's technical domains, whether it's business domains, and all that. And from that, what path to pick? Uh, it's not a state of being low, but it's a state of uncertainty. That you could go this path, you could go that path. That I could, let's say, go down the path of, let's say, even a doctorate in telecommunications, because that's a logical flow, right? He has a diploma, he's an undergrad, he has a master's. So why not a PhD just in that domain? Why pick a domain which puts you on the path of display engineering? It was more about listening to firstly what the heart was saying, uh, understanding that, hey, this is really where my brain and heart can work in unison. Uh, and ideally figuring out a path to, let's say, have a monetary outcome towards it, whether it's academia, whether it's industry. But those times of uncertainty, and people, well-wishers, would tell you that, what are you doing? You build things down this path. Why are you heading down that way? Instead of zigging, you're zagging. Kya kar raha hai? Is your head in the right space?
Right.
So those are the times where it may not be a low state, but you might feel that nothing is clear in front of you, and it's working through a framework ideally that allows you to put a decision. And whatever I've made that decision saying that if this does not work, I am the one to blame. When I make it very clear that I am the one to blame if this fails, and I'll live with it. And that outcome and that statement has liberated me.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to blame circumstances. Very easy to say, "Arey, family did this. Arey, no one supported me this way, that way, all that."
Or my boss has spoiled my career.
Whoever,
that also
whoever, it
very
can be a
common.
spouse. You can be. It's easy to point fingers at others. Even the return back to India, right? Because everyone's like, "Arey, you spent so many years there. Why don't you just stay there? Look at stuff people are doing and so on." No, I want to do this thing, and if this does not work, it is on to me. No one else.
Yeah. But at least but the thing is, you are doing what you wanted, not just because somebody is telling you where your heart is, you are doing that.
Correct.
And if I think even after taking that unconventional path or going in the other direction of display engineering, because you were quite interested in that, and because of that reason you went in that direction, you did well. If it's not that just because somebody told you, Hemang, you know what, this one is boom is coming in this one, so let's get into that one, get into that direction. You did not take that path. Nowadays, many people, I talk to many people, and they just ask me that, Mayank, tell me whether this particular technology will be, will have a future in the next 5 years, 10 years, whether this will be fine. I will go ahead and learn that. But if I ask, but they do not have any perspective around whether they are interested in doing that or not. There's nothing like that, right? It is just that if, for example, if I tell them that, this is going to be bright, they'll just go ahead and learn it, right? So I think that's really good. And thanks for explaining that. I hope people who listen to this conversation would get a lot of things out of this. A person who started studies right from India did not do 11th and 12th, because the person had understanding that with diploma I would be able to study the technical stuff earlier, ultimately have to do BTech or engineering, and did that, and then went ahead and did things. I hope everybody gets this perspective that you don't need to know the full path. You need to know a small amount, do your best, and then things will shape up, right? Thanks a lot, Himang. Thanks a lot for giving time and being patient of really talking for so long. Thanks a lot.
Well, thank you, Mayank. You kept the conversation flowing, and I really hope anyone who's listening, the last takeaway was what Mayank just said, which is just, go further ahead. Things will shape up well. Yeah, just, keep it simple.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll catch up again. See you. Bye.